My name is Dominique, and in the past few years, I've lived on 4 continents, learning everything I could about history, language, and culture. I traveled to understand how people on opposite ends of the earth can have unique national identities, yet in some ways, still be so similar. Somewhere along the way, I realized the one thing we all had in common: food. Something that always brings us together, a common denominator of the human race. I traveled the world to discover food as an expression of our identities, to discover who we are because of food and its ingredients. The first stop along my travels is New York, home of the Rios family, my family, and the place we meet my aunt, Elaine Mirando. Every year around the holidays, my family gets together to make pastelas, an ethnic dish from Puerto Rico, similar to tamales, but prepared uniquely with Puerto Rican ingredients. In total, the pastela making process took us over 10 hours.
The process is, oh my goodness, do I really want to do this again? It's a lot of work.
I call it Christine servings.
I would say the hardest part is we're using bananas, green bananas, and they're cooking bananas as opposed to your yellow bananas that you eat. Plantains, which is plátanos that we use. There's another vegetable kind of on the potato side. It's called yautía that we use. And all of that is either peeled or the leaf broken down, which is a lot of it. Sometimes it's really hard to do that. So you're doing each plátano and each green banana, everything one at a time, and that's why it becomes a family thing, because you really need a lot of help.
Are we getting this 2 at a time? 2 at a time.
After you're grating everything all together, all the bananas and the plátanos and the yautía, that becomes like a batter that we call masa. Then we put some achote, which gives it color and a little bit of taste. So we put down the cabbage, then you put the masa, and we do a whole pot of pork that we cut into pieces, and we cook that with a spice called recaito. It gives flavor to the meat.
Make it a little tiny.
Hey!
Oh yeah.
One more time in your fire.
Yeah.
Eating the product.
And that goes on top of the masa. We also add olives in there. We add chickpeas in there. We add roasted peppers in there. Then you're covering it all up with the masa. Then you take the paper, fold the sides and everything, and then you have to put string on it, because when you boil it, you don't want it to come apart. So you tie it with string. And then final product, you boil it in water for about an hour. And then, hey, it's time to eat now.
In the fall of 2016, I moved to Argentina to study Spanish for 4 months. That's where I met Lisa Ubalecker Andrade, a professor of history at the University of San Andres. Originally from Virginia, Lisa has been living in Buenos Aires for nearly 10 years.
I teach a class that is called The Culture of Food and Wine in Argentina, but I kind of think about it as the history and reality of Argentina through food. Argentina's culture, its idea of a nation, so much revolved around this production of meat. And the idea that the rest of the world eating beef is a luxury, but here was a source of pride for people.
As part of Lisa's class, we visited a well-known butcher shop in Buenos Aires. There, we met Arnan, a butcher who demonstrated his skills with a carving knife and explained the significance of Argentine beef.
Se va a ver en la cara.
So if the cow lived with a lot of stress in its life, you can see it in the meat. The asado is an event. It's a very masculine event in which the asador, the man who runs the asado, generally puts on like a food performance for his friends and for his family or whoever he's cooking for. There's this great saying in Argentina that an asador is born, not made, with the idea that you can learn to cook, but to be a great asador, it comes from something else within you.
Ahora, si ese asador te cuenta un cuento, te cuenta una anécdota, es una persona cariñosa, y esa carne va a salir rica.
The actual event, is often compared to a barbecue, but the difference is that it's also kind of like a love song to your friends, but through meat. The idea is to have asado with coming together of people who don't live in your house and share a moment together. I think that's probably the biggest, most important cultural thing that it signals. And just the importance of meat. It's not just something that you eat, that there's a performance aspect to really putting, sort of valuing each cut of meat as a different individual subject, right? There's an amount of passion that each piece should taste differently. It has its unique way of being cooked.
¿Por qué pensás que el asado es muy importante para la gente acá?
Porque creo que está dentro del tejido emocional, digamos, el asado, el comer la carne con hueso. De hecho, se come con las manos, o sea, se agarra un pedazo de pan, un cuchillo.
A ver.
¿Rica? El asado es el asado, pero el asado también tiene un aroma. Y ese aroma está en los patios, en los pasillos, en las calles, en las obras, ¿no? Ese relato, ese aroma, nosotros lo tenemos metido, ¿entendés? O sea, adentro es como si fuera el sonido de la voz de tu madre o eso, ¿entendés? Eso es, ahí está.
It's about what that artist can bring to that specific recipe as opposed to modifying the food in some way, right? It's not about suddenly putting hot sauce on your meat. It's about his exact timing or what kind of wood he used to create that asado. Do they always stay the same? Absolutely not. But are they sort of defensively guarded from the kind of new trending things or the ideas of globalization? Absolutely. There's an idea of trying to maintain some kind of classic because that's what people want.
I left Argentina in December, returning home in time for our annual Christmas tradition. My grandmother, Guadalupe Rios, is the matriarch of the family and the first Rios to learn how to make pasteles.
I was born in 1932, almost 86 years ago. I started making them when I was about 25, 26. I learned from my mother-in-law. I used to make them all the time with her. I never changed the recipe, and I always made them the same way my mother-in-law did. And there's no other way. Well, now that you can use a blender, yes, but I still like doing it the other way. It's just, that's the way I am.
That we should be using the blender and not the grater, but whatever. They're like, why? You're still doing it that way?
You're taking out the main part is doing them. Those are my in-laws. That's Dana. That's the family. Dominique and Callie. That's Ariana. That's my husband and I. This is all me with all when the kids were young.
I do remember my mother making them all by herself. Everything from scratch to finish. And then when we moved from Manhattan into the Bronx, then we started again a lot more involved in helping her do it.
Would you do it all in one day?
Yeah. That's why I used to go to sleep about 7 in the morning to get up again. Like, how did I do this? I like them to watch me if they want to learn, and that's what my kids did.
Okay.
There you go. It's a kind of a holiday when we really talk to one another and get together, and that was more or less why we did it, and I continue it. And hoping my kids will continue it too.
Hey, Britt,
Take the meat without.
in 40 years, are we going to make these?
Yeah, that's me. 40 years. I don't know what I'm going to do in 40 years.
It was just kind of important for me to learn how to do it and to really listen to them when they were talking, and so that I could really understand their language. I shouldn't say their language. It should be mine too. But unfortunately, we're not all fluent in Spanish.
My mother didn't know English, neither did my father. But my mother learned, and so did my father, they learned English from us. And then the pimientos, always speaking English with my husband, that we really didn't talk Spanish in the house.
Being that we're just not as, I don't know how to say this any better, not as Puerto Rican as we should be, I think that it's good for us to know that at least we could get our culture through food. If we're not doing it through language, we could at least get it through food and learn some of the language through the food.
After spending a few weeks at home, I left for Dublin, Ireland. That's where I met Pádraig O'Gallagher, owner and executive chef of Gallagher's Boxty House at the center of Temple Bar.
I had this idea I dreamt up in Venezuela when I was working for these Syrians. They used to make their pita breads, their flatbreads, and fill the center with koftas and different fillings and roll it. I was brought up on boxty, which is potato bread from the northwest of Ireland, from where I'm from, County Leitrim. And our pancake was a little bit similar, so I said, wouldn't it be great someday to come home and open an Irish restaurant? And my dad was a veterinary surgeon, we had a farm, we had a pub, we were well off, but you daren't leave anything on the plate when you were eating. And like our bon appetit was get it into you. And it was a family of 9 of us as well, so it was SOS, it was stretch or starve. Food is becoming more central towards our way of thinking. I think, again, going back 28 years and go back further, go back 170 years to An Gorta Mór, the big hunger, or the great hunger, which was the potato blight and the devastation of the potato crop. The population fell from 8.5 million to a little over 3 million. And I don't think we've ever actually properly addressed it. We kind of brushed it under the carpet. So our relationship with food never really developed, even though we had fantastic food. When I opened up here in '89, there was only 8 restaurants in the area. There's 83 or 85 today in this little Temple Bar area. And there was no Irish food. There was nothing celebrating Irish food. So with the boxty, I try to give it a label as, you know, okay, I can base everything around the boxty and add things onto it, but the foundation would be the boxty. There are 3 types of boxty: boiled, baked and pan boxty. The base ingredient for all of them are potatoes and flour. For the boxty pancake, you make a batter by adding milk and water. For the dumplings, you actually just knead it together and roll it out. And then the boxty loaf, again, you knead the dough, you add some butter to that, and then we have another product which are boxty fries. And they're boxty pancakes sliced very thinly and deep fat fried. And they're absolutely delicious. Lovely. You have to get you some now. And these guys are just Moorish.
Oh, that's so good.
Very good, isn't it?
Yeah.
Hospitality is in our nature. It's in our DNA. It's actually, hospitality was written into our old Brehon laws. If somebody came to your door, you were obliged to feed them. And that's actually laws going back 800-900 years. I like to think that we're friendly, open people. We'll talk to anybody. We'll have, as we call it, a bit of crack, a few drinks, laugh.
Before heading home, there was one last stop on my journey. For 10 weeks, in the summer of 2017, I moved to Shanghai, China. Every morning I woke up to cars and mopeds driving down busy streets. But before heading to class, I always made time to stop at one of the street vendors to grab a quick breakfast. Every day they served fresh scallion pancakes with eggs and pork made right in front of you. I also learned that even in the sweltering heat, it's always good to indulge in a Chinese tradition called hot pot. A meal in which a group of people gather around a boiling pot of water, adding raw meat and vegetables to create a simmering broth. At Din Tai Fung, an incredible restaurant with locations all over the world, I watched master chefs perfect the art of making steamed soup dumplings, each sculpted and weighed by hand with great precision. You could also say I almost perfected the art of eating them. Every country I lived in had their own food landscape. Although the food itself was vastly different, people everywhere treated food the same way. Food was a way to interact and participate in something integral to identity and culture. When I returned home, I realized these moments with my family in the kitchen were about much more than cooking.
This is Grandma's signature food. But I don't know, it's kind of in competition with this one. Oh, that's a good one too.
No, I forgot about
Let's see,
it.
Grandma, let's see.
Stage in Manhattan Center.
If it was just about pastellas, I mean, you can go out and just buy pastellas if you want to, but the thing about everybody coming together and just spending that quality time together and making them is what makes making pastellas so much fun.
Don't edit that out.
Class it up a little, all right?
As much as it could get like crazy and loud, I think that's the best part. Just everyone coming together to do it and the tradition that's behind it.
I think you did pretty well. You definitely had some hiccups with remembering, but you definitely got those olives in there.
Also Ollie, and then there's Ollie Jr. and then there's Ollie Jr. the second. And
She doesn't know how much base to put on for it, for the cabbage. Like,
Puts like a little bit.
You're doing okay. Did you put the cabbage in there?
Yeah. Just makes them very fat and chubby.
That's how people like them.
Uncle George. You need Kathy, Mom, get over here real quick.
It's only once every year or every couple years, and like I said, just the tradition of it, I think, is just makes it worth it. Just the memories and like that our family's passing it on from generation to generation.
As we grated plátanos and yautía, adding each individual ingredient, spending hours in the kitchen together, we created more than just food. We created memories and reflections of our heritage. During my travels in Argentina, Ireland, and China, simply by eating food, I had learned about the history, social trends, people, and their national identities. And I came to realize I was participating in something bigger than myself. Every day, I was taking part in my own culture, just by choosing particular ingredients, preparing certain dishes, cooking with my friends, and sharing meals together.
And the whole idea is that our culture also revolves around food. You know, it's how we bring people together, it's how we communicate love, it's how we express ourselves.
15 minutes.
No food is from anywhere, really. All food is of the world. It's just kind of what people did with it that shaped what it actually means.